have a good day. And I was thinking, I didn't want to ask a question that would have that. I wouldn't have asked it. Thanks. So the artist said she didn't know, and that's really important information. It's not good or bad. But when somebody doesn't know, that's a trigger for maybe a sense of evaluation. What is the art world? The art world is everything. I mean, it's not just one thing. It's not everything. We have a world outside of art, but the art world is not one way of looking at things. And in aesthetics, and Dato, when he wrote the article, I think 67, 68, the art world is the thing coined by Arthur Dato, who looked at, trying to formulate what the art world was, how we look at it. And there was a lot of protest art, there was a lot of pushback against, abstract expressions, the pop artists and neo-arte povera was changing the way art looked, and a lot of people had trouble understanding, is it art? I thought that was an interesting question. That's just one of the questions, is it art? And when we have somebody who's engaging, they can be disengaged and still be making art. So where do I get the privilege of saying it's good or not good? I mean, I write criticism, and I can say this is interesting to me or not interesting. But do I have the right to say it is good or not good? And some people might even feel there's an obligation to do that, to be a taste maker, to be able to, an arbiter of taste, to be able to say, does this demonstrate good taste in art? And then once we've said that, it's a big problem, because very probably somebody's going to disagree with us. And then there's the hegemony of, the tastemakers. Now, who are the tastemakers in the arts? Who are the people that decide this? Just some random, what kind of people decide what is good art and what's not good art from the audience?
The dominant.
Who are they? Who are the dominant?
Maybe, suppose in Indian context, dominant caste people will decide.
Okay, could be a dominant caste people deciding. Any other groups of people? There's just a bunch of them.
Funding agencies.
Okay, people that have money, funding agencies, people that vet, that selectors.
Or people in academics who's done a lot of literature study.
Academics that do a lot of literature study. I always like art historians that don't like artists. That's always interesting. I was in a class on contemporary art. It was like, what is contemporary art? I thought that was interesting, so I attended.
I don't completely agree with the caste, but I say the powerful people.
Perfectly fine. We're not categorizing them yet. We're just putting it out there as a basket of possible things.
Because I think powerful people have a lot to say, because they think that no one can go against them. So they themselves decide what is good and what is bad.
Precisely, powerful people. And whether that be caste related, or it could be money related, or it could be families. You've got something to say.
Yeah, but sometimes also it happens that if a majority of the people, like in a group of 10, if 6 people have a common opinion, that can be that is taken as a validation of whether it is good or bad.
Exactly, law of the majority. And why do people spin stories in certain areas of the world and have the internet shut down?
And so some people who have long years of experience, not just learning, keep aside learning the art, but at least watching it. For example, newspaper reporters who write reviews on dance performances per se. Maybe they are reporting dance performances in big newspapers, and they have 30 to 35 years of experience. So I have observed personally that they don't accept innovations, and they say, this is new and this is bad. What is old is good. So that is also there. That perspective is also there.
So the idea of somebody being ensconced, solidified into their opinion because of the nature of the organizations in which they're operating. So one president of a university that I met on some research I was doing, I did research all around the university, and they wanted to create a contemporary art program. I said, why? They said, we want to do that because we want to be at the table with the other things. We want to be at the Venice Biennial, we want to do this, we want to do that. And I said, what's keeping you back? And they said, oh, the professors. They're all very powerful, and they have their like tribes, and we can't get rid of them. And her solution was, she said, we're going to create something called tenure. And I said, tenure? It sounds like we're going the opposite direction. Tenure means they're hired for life. And she said, oh no, my system of tenure is different. She says, after 10 years, they're fired. And I said, oh, that's a good spin. But I said, I fundamentally disagree with that as well, because some of these people are national, this is in Mongolia, they're national treasures. They're amazing the way they teach. And you can tell that they do have power. But there's a fundamental problem with the way power was managed within the organization. And there was no space for innovation in contemporary arts. So there were contemporary artists that also, Fulbright trained contemporary artists. They knew that it was going to be an uphill battle. So what I suggested was incubate, create this separately from, if you've got a bunch of people that are against you, don't put it right in the middle of their space. When I was a sculptor at St. Martin's in my first year, the administration decided to take a quarter of our studio and give it to another program. And that just made everybody angry, except then people that were in that new program, which was called Critical Fine Art Practice. They didn't even have windows. They just closed the door and they wouldn't talk to us. So there was like enmity all around. They could have done a better job. But they were trying to incubate it, but they did it in a way that was so close that everybody observed the non-relationship, and that made people not happy. It didn't create any positive feelings. It created a sense of who are they, and why are we not welcome? And it's in our studio. Then I thought about that over the years, and then I got rid of the program because the program was created as an outlet for the intellectual part of the arts. The people that wanted to think about arts, that would eventually either be artists or teachers, but also wanted to write. A lot of them wanted to also curate. And St. Martin's at that time didn't have a curating program. And it wasn't interdisciplinary. This was a step towards that. So with the Mongolian University, I said, look, I think you could actually create this and in a way train the professors in a way that's natural. I mean, I gave a lecture on contemporary art in the 1960s, and they were forced to attend. And I was thinking, well, who must be forced to attend? They didn't look all very happy about it. And it was a very nice talk. We talked about Andy Warhol and things like that, Roy Lichtenstein. And then they all just left, and it was kind of like, well, we don't want to study this. Well, what's the opportunity is to create a space where it's enjoyable for the faculty. So I said, you've got this real estate. I just presented it to the president. I said, you've got this real estate. This is how much it costs. It's available. The school owns it. And it's going to cost $212 a month to rent. I will find you the money, and we will find you the instructors. And she says, impossible, meeting over. And I was like, no problem. I had done my bit, and I thought, this was what I was meant to learn, was the resistance exists because they might not feel that they're part of the solution. Or in her case, I was told, she just doesn't understand the system. She doesn't understand, in a way, somebody told me, some people are they're underwater because it's over their heads. They are managing too many things, and we couldn't do something in addition to what she was already managing. So the question became, from an administrative point of view, how can we create this new space? The first step was funding. The second step was senior level person supporting it. Without that, and you have to make sure that senior level person is going to be there for at least, a few years. So you have to have buy-in, because once that person's gone, the person underneath them that didn't like them in the first place is going to undo everything they did, and they're going to trash that program, and everybody loses. So the idea was, how can we make it sustainable? And then, what does it mean to bring in people from the outside? Well, it meant a fresh perspective for them. But what the second phase of that was to get their own artists that had been working in contemporary art, which they had been ignoring, because they had professionally ignored them, the contemporary artists in the community, for so many years that these were just diverging as two different things, and there was no art school, and I said it needs to be here. I said the art school needs to be in this one place because there isn't another art school. And if we could create one, we could. But they needed it as a degree granting body. So when we design something, there's a process to it, is to understand who the stakeholders are, but also to go back and say, what are the students doing? Why in Britain and in America are students going through art programs and not wanting to be artists? It's not a big problem in some ways, but why are the programs switching so that art becomes a minor and that it's privileging? They get the feeling that then the idea is, well, then where can somebody go to art school? I mean, then we just dial it back. If there are so many hybrid programs that don't teach art as that kind of an intensive discipline, then, and if they want to get everything done in 4 years, is it possible? And if there's a spectrum of different types of programs, maybe a lot of people here, maybe that percentage, 10%, want to be artists at the end. Maybe they say when they're 18, I want to be an artist for sure. What they told us at St. Martin's, they said, look around you. We looked around. They said, of the 100 of you here, 10 of you will be artists in 10 years. And I just looked around and said, well, I'm going to be one of them for sure. And lo and behold, most of the people didn't become artists. Then the question is, what is the program supposed to do? Are we supposed to incubate artists? Or are we, as some university programs have changed themselves to be, we're creating well-rounded individuals? When I was researching the Bharatanatyam in Chennai, I learned that when I asked the students, and there were, some of them were teenagers, and I said, what do you want to do after school? Oh, I want to go into the army, I want to be a pilot, I want to be an IT professional. One person said, I want to be a Bharatanatyam dancer. So, but in that case, Bharatanatyam is quite different. It's like, it's more of understanding philosophy about learning. And it stays with you. And I believe that contemporary art stays with us. I just don't think we remind ourselves of that often enough. That contemporary art is, I like to say, it's about entrepreneurship, or it's about, leading a more fulfilling life. But unless we know who we're selling to, how can we create a program? That's the question. I'm just going to open it up. Any comments on that? So we know the power, where the power is, and also the power is in the students. One thing I thought about was, if students want in an art school, which can study anything, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, if they want to study video games, what do we do? And especially what we do, do we make them study with a traditional, wood sculpture and just make them do it? Or do we give them an option to study with the hot shot from, with a media degree, and do they work with them? The question is if most of the students want to be multimedia, new media. I always had a problem because what is new media? I mean, it's always evolving. But does the program reflect that, and does it adapt? Do the staff adapt to what the students need? Because I believe firmly that the students know what they're doing. If they're curated, if they're just let in the door and anybody can come in this revolving door, that's a different thing. But if they are selected because they have the potential to know what they're doing, not that they have to be artists, but that they know why they're there. And it's hard to do when you're 18. It's easier on a master's course. But our responsibility is perhaps to make it adaptable so that whatever they do, they can do it on their own. And that we provide the resources for them to develop those skills. When I was at St. Martin's, if I wanted to learn drawing, they'd say, go learn drawing. Great. And I'd say, where? And they go, I don't know. Well, we'll look for you. You can find somebody who wants to teach you drawing. If you want to learn woodwork or how to weld, well, we have a welding studio. This Armando is this Peruvian gentleman downstairs, and he would teach us how to weld. We could do that to our delight. If there was Damien Hirst needed people to make his shark tanks. So he went to people and said, can you build this? And they said, yeah, sure, we can build it. The artist is not necessarily going to create these things themselves. They will learn how to go to a local manufacturer. And that gives them the agency to start being really creative on an expanded field. So I just want to give you this quote. I'll tell you the secret to good teaching made possible in an experience without predetermining what that experience will be. The idea of, and that's somebody that's very much connected to Teachers College at Columbia. And the idea that's about pedagogy. So how can we as teachers teach something or share something? I'm not going to say share knowledge. That almost doesn't make sense. It can exist, but to share something that supports the student in building their own ways forward. They're intelligent enough to get into the school program. They're intelligent enough to find their ways through it. Now, I mentioned before, what's the difference between mentoring and coaching and teaching? Teaching is basically is a relationship between an educator and a student. But I can learn from different people, from friends when I'm not students. But teaching very often is part of a predetermined existing relationship with an institution. Mentoring, when I think of mentoring, I think of, in an organization we're going to find you a mentor. Now, what is that mentor going to do?
So especially in art schools, apart from teaching the grammar and the technicalities of art, I mean, entire world, not just one country, it's very important that arts management is taught. How to project yourself to the world, how to promote yourself. Because at the end of the day, the one problem that every artist is facing is that the financial support and the career opportunities to earn money, which is very important for everyone.
It's a really good point. So to have, you were giving an example of the importance to understand the dynamics within a certain environment and context into which somebody is going to participate that will affect their livelihood, and to understand how to maneuver in that environment. When I ask about mentoring usually is somebody that has more experience that helps somebody that has less experience. And within an organization, they say, well, this is the organization, I know everybody in it. This is the senior person that says, oh, I'm so glad to be mentored by you. And then they say, okay, this is how you do it. This is what, this is how the organization works. This is what's different from other organizations. You have to prove yourself here. By this amount of time, you have to demonstrate this. That's mentoring. Basically, it's directive. It's telling somebody, this is what I recommend you do. And consulting is the same way. We got the two-handed argument. One-handed argument is do this, because that's why we're paying you to tell the client this. Do this. Then you have coaching. And I'm a certified coach. And the whole thing about coaching, and I work with business school students, and I work with artists, I work with PhDs in the arts. And the whole thing about coaching is I can't say what I think they should do. I just can't tell them. I mean, at the end of the day, they can say, oh, please tell me. And I probably would say, well, what do you think? I would just throw it right back at them. But if they asked me, I'd say, well, okay, then I'm being a little bit directive. I have to be very careful. Once I've engaged in that, they are on a hierarchy relationship. But if I don't do that, and I say, what do you want to do? And they say, I don't know. And I say, okay, what do you think? What would help you to think about what you want to do? And they go, well, I don't know. But then they're a little bit more interested. They say, maybe if I did some experiments in some classes, and I took this one, and I took a few classes, and I say, which ones are interesting to you? And they say, well, I've always been interested in printmaking. And I wouldn't say, well, I don't like printmaking myself. I wouldn't say that. I would say, I mean, I do like printmaking, but I would say, that's really interesting. What's interesting for you in printmaking? They say, I really, really love the materials, but I like the way that they make reproductions in these complex ways. And oh, what kind of printmaking do you mean? Woodblock. And I go, okay. So we identify something through a discussion where I'm just asking them questions. They know their life better than I do. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be able to live their life very well according to what I want. It would just be, it's ridiculous. And then, you know, my own father, he had his plans. He says, I think you should do this. And I said, yeah, write it down, don't worry. And then at the end of the day, I said, but I'm doing it this way. And he said things like, he said to me once, he said, oh, you know, I don't think you should be an entrepreneur, because he said I couldn't do it. Not me. He said he wasn't interested in doing it, therefore I wouldn't be interested. And I thought, this is about him, isn't it? And then we look at the teacher, the educator, this huge role where people are like going, oh God, you know, I'm placing all my trust in you, Guru. You have to be there for me, because you're up there, you're on a pedestal. And then the idea is that can do a lot of good, but in the arts today, the contemporary arts, people want to make their own decisions. And there is a game to play, as we're talking about power structures. There are ways that people can engage in making a type of art, go to the right university, right? Where are the right universities, people will ask. And there's this one, that one, there are tribes. And at the end of the day, my question is, who are the happy people that graduate? Who are the happy people that are artists? What do they talk about? What does it mean for them to talk about their education experience? What are the ones that say, this was the best experience? What are the ones that say, I met somebody in 2001 who was, I was at a party, a New Year's party, and I had spent very little money because of the Goldsmiths wasn't that expensive, and I was living in Japan, and that was all paid for by the Japanese. And I said, how was your MFA experience? He said, it was terrible. And he said, I have 70,000